Before we begin the story, let us know where you're watching from by leaving a comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone. The divorce papers in Emily's trembling hands felt heavier than the 6-week-old baby sleeping in her arms. She sat in her beat-up Honda Civic outside the Sunset Motel on Connecticut Avenue, watching the neon sign flicker between vacancy and darkness. The March wind howled through the cracked window seal, and she pulled Liam closer to her chest, breathing in that sweet newborn scent that had become her lifeline. Just 48 hours ago, she'd been Mrs. Ethan Reed, living in their small apartment in Northeast D.C., still believing her husband would embrace fatherhood. 2 days ago, she'd still believed love could conquer anything. Now she was nobody, with nowhere to go and exactly $247 in her worn wallet. Irreconcilable differences, the papers stated in cold legal terms. But Emily knew the brutal truth that would never appear in court documents. Ethan Reed couldn't handle being responsible for anything more demanding than his PlayStation and his pipe dreams of rap stardom. When Liam had arrived 2 weeks early, screaming, hungry, and utterly dependent, Ethan had looked at his son like he was an alien invasion. "I never wanted this," he'd said 3 days ago, gesturing at Liam like he was broken furniture. "I'm 24, Em. I got a whole life ahead of me. I can't be tied down with some crying baby." "He's your son," Emily had whispered, still sore from her emergency C-section. Still weak from the difficult birth. "Maybe. You were pretty friendly with that teacher from your school before we got married." The accusation had hit her like a physical blow. Daniel Carter had been nothing more than a colleague, someone who'd helped her with her classroom when she was pregnant and struggling. But Ethan had twisted even that kindness into something ugly. Yesterday morning, while Liam had been napping and Emily was finally managing to shower for the first time in 3 days, Ethan had packed everything valuable from their apartment: the television, the laptop, even the good silverware her grandmother had given them as a wedding present. He'd left the divorce papers on the kitchen counter next to an eviction notice. Apparently, he hadn't paid rent in 2 months. "Ethan, please," she'd begged when he came back for his clothes. "Where are we supposed to go?" "Figure it out," he'd said, not even looking at Liam. "You're so smart with your college degree and everything. You figure it out." He'd taken their good car, too, leaving her with the Honda that needed a new transmission and burned oil. By the time Emily had realized how thoroughly he'd destroyed their life, Ethan was gone, along with their savings account, their security deposit, and any illusion she'd had about the man she'd married. Now, sitting outside this rundown motel in one of D.C.'s transitional neighborhoods, Emily felt the full weight of her new reality. She was 26 years old, a former elementary school teacher who'd had to quit when Liam was born early and had complications. She had no family. Her grandmother, who'd raised her, had died 2 years ago, and she'd never known her parents. Her friends from work were sweet, but none of them were close enough to take in a new mother and baby indefinitely. Liam stirred in his sleep, making those tiny sounds that could either mean he was settling deeper into sleep or about to wake up hungry. Emily prayed for sleep. She'd been nursing him almost constantly, and her body was exhausted from producing milk on too little food and too much stress. The motel looked like something from a 1972nd crime show. Single story with doors that opened directly to the parking lot. The paint was peeling, and several of the room numbers were missing letters, but the sign said weekly rates available, and when Emily had called from the payphone at the gas station, the woman who answered had sounded kind. "You need a room, honey?" she'd asked. "We got clean sheets and working heat. That's more than some folks got." Emily had almost cried at the simple kindness in the woman's voice. Now, gathering her courage, she carefully lifted Liam and grabbed the diaper bag that contained everything they owned. A few changes of clothes for both of them, diapers, formula though she was trying to nurse exclusively to save money, and the small amount of cash she'd managed to scrape together from her purse, and the change jar. The bell above the motel office door chimed as Emily entered, and a woman looked up from behind the counter. She was perhaps 60, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, and the kind of face that had seen everything but still chose kindness. Her skin was a rich brown, and her eyes were warm with genuine concern. "You must be the young lady who called," the woman said, setting down her paperwork. "I'm Ruth Thompson." I manage this place. Emily Larson, Emily said, shifting Liam to one arm so she could reach for her wallet. I called about the weekly rate. Ruth's eyes took in Emily's appearance. The clothes that hung loosely on her postpartum body, the exhaustion in her face, the way she held her baby, like he was the only precious thing left in her world. Room 24, Ruth said, pulling a key from the pegboard behind her. It's in the back, away from the street noise. Quieter for the baby. Emily's eyes filled with tears at this small consideration. How much? $200 for the week. That includes utilities. Emily counted out the bills with shaking hands, watching her safety net disappear. Ruth noticed. You got family coming to help? Ruth asked gently. Emily shook her head. It's just us. Ruth was quiet for a moment, then reached under the counter and pulled out a small bag of groceries. Bread, peanut butter, milk, some fruit. Somebody donated these earlier, Ruth said, though Emily suspected that was a lie. Shame to let them go to waste. I can't. You can, and you will, Ruth said firmly but kindly. We look out for each other here. That's how we survive. Emily accepted the bag, her throat too tight to speak properly. Thank you. Ruth walked around the counter and led Emily toward the door. Room 24's got a little kitchenette. Nothing fancy, but the stove works, and the refrigerator's cold. You need anything, and I mean anything. You come find me. I'm usually here or in room 1. The room was small but clean, exactly as Ruth had promised. There was a double bed with a faded but freshly washed comforter, a small table with 2 chairs, and a tiny kitchen area with a half-size refrigerator and a 2-burner stove. The bathroom was cramped but functional, and there were clean towels folded on the bed. Emily set Liam down on the bed, surrounding him with pillows so he couldn't roll, and sank into one of the chairs. For the first time in 48 hours, she felt safe enough to really cry. The tears came in great, silent sobs that shook her whole body. She cried for the marriage that had failed, for the future she'd planned that would never happen, for the fear of raising Liam alone with no money and no support. She cried for the exhaustion that felt like it might kill her, and for the love that felt too big for her broken heart. Liam woke up as the sun was setting, his cry sharp and demanding. Emily picked him up, changed his diaper on the bed, and settled into the chair to nurse him. As he latched on, his tiny hand gripping her finger, Emily felt some of her strength return. It's just you and me, baby boy, she whispered to him. But we're going to be okay. Mama's going to figure this out. Through the thin walls she could hear sounds of life, a television, someone talking on the phone, the distant hum of traffic on Connecticut Avenue. In the room next door, she heard a man's voice, low and tired, talking to someone. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was sad, defeated. She wasn't the only one who'd ended up here broken. As Liam finished nursing and drifted back to sleep, Emily made a mental plan. Tomorrow, she'd start looking for work, anything that would let her keep Liam with her. She'd figure out childcare, healthcare, all the impossible logistics of being a single mother with no resources. Tonight, though, she just held her son and let herself feel grateful for this small, safe space. Ruth's kindness had reminded her that there was still goodness in the world, even when everything felt dark. Liam slept peacefully in her arms, trusting her completely to keep him safe and fed and loved. And Emily made him a promise. No matter what it took, no matter how hard she had to fight, she would build them a life worth living. She just had to survive long enough to figure out how. Outside her window, the motel's neon sign continued its flickering dance between hope and darkness, and Emily chose hope. Chapter 2. The sound of silence breaking. Nathan Brooks had never realized how deafening silence could be until he discovered his wife in bed with his best friend. He sat on the edge of the motel bed in room 25, still wearing the same Armani suit from 3 days ago when his world detonated. The scotch in his hand had gone warm, forgotten as he stared at the water stain on the ceiling that resembled the shattered map of his life. 72 hours ago, he'd been Nathaniel Brooks III, successful real estate mogul, devoted husband, a man who seemingly possessed everything. He'd owned a penthouse overlooking the Potomac, a summer estate in the Hamptons, and a portfolio worth more than some small nation's GDP. More importantly, he'd believed his marriage was built on 5 years of genuine love and shared dreams. Now he was just Nathan, hiding in a cheap motel because he couldn't bear returning to the penthouse where he discovered Laura writhing beneath Ryan Patel, his business partner and supposed best friend, in the bed they'd shared since their wedding night. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was professional suicide. Ryan had access to all of Nathan's development projects, his client lists, his financial information. The pillow talk between him and Laura had probably cost Nathan millions in competitive advantages and insider knowledge. But somehow, that hurt less than the image burned into his brain of Laura's face when she saw him standing in their bedroom doorway. She hadn't looked ashamed. She'd looked annoyed that he'd come home early. "Nathan, this isn't what it looks like," she'd said, not even bothering to cover herself. "It looks like your expletive." "My best friend in our bed," Nathan had replied with a calmness that surprised them all. "Don't be dramatic. It's just sex. Just sex." 5 years of marriage reduced to just sex. Ryan had scrambled for his clothes, muttering apologies and excuses, but Nathan had already stopped listening. The conversation that followed was a blur of accusations, justifications, and the slow, methodical destruction of everything he'd thought was real. "I never loved you the way you loved me," Laura had finally admitted, sitting naked on their expensive sheets without an ounce of shame. "I tried to, but I'm not built that way. You were safe, Nathan. Stable. Good for my image." "My image? You think I married you for your personality?" She'd laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You're boring, Nathan. You go to bed at 10 o'clock. You read financial reports for fun. And you actually thought I wanted children with you. Ryan makes me feel alive." Nathan had left without another word, checking into the first motel he'd found that took cash. He turned off his phone, ignored his assistant's increasingly frantic calls, and spent 3 days drinking scotch and questioning every decision he'd ever made. The worst part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the dawning realization that Laura was right. He was boring. He'd spent his entire adult life building wealth and status, thinking that success would somehow transform him into the kind of man women loved instead of just married for security. Through the thin walls of room 25, he could hear signs of life from the neighboring rooms. An older man coughing, a television turned up too loud, and from room 24, the sound that was slowly driving him insane, a baby crying. It had started around midnight on his first night here, soft at first, then building to the kind of desperate wails that spoke of real need. But it wasn't the crying that got to him. It was the voice that followed. A woman, young by the sound of it, singing lullabies in a voice so pure and full of love that it made his chest ache. She sang everything from traditional songs to what sounded like improvised melodies, her voice never losing patience, never showing frustration, just endless, gentle comfort for a baby who clearly needed her. "Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's going to buy you a mockingbird." Nathan found himself listening for those moments when the crying would stop and her voice would emerge, soft and soothing. It was the most beautiful thing he'd heard in years, certainly more beautiful than anything in his sterile, expensive penthouse. On his second night, he'd given in to curiosity and looked out his window. He'd seen her then, a young black woman, walking slowly back and forth in the parking lot, bouncing a tiny bundle in her arms. Even in the harsh light of the street lamp, he could see her beauty, natural hair that caught the light, a face that was tired but radiant with love, curves that spoke of recent motherhood. She moved with a grace that seemed impossible given her obvious exhaustion, swaying and humming as she walked. When the baby finally settled, she'd looked up at the sky for a long moment. And Nathan had seen her lips moving in what looked like a prayer. Now, on his third night in this place, Nathan heard her voice again through the walls. The baby was fussing, not full-out crying, just making those sounds that babies make when they're not quite satisfied with the world. "I know, sweet boy," she was saying. "I know you're still hungry. Let me see what I can do." There was the sound of movement, a refrigerator opening and closing, then the unmistakable whir of a bottle warmer formula. Nathan realized she was giving the baby formula at, he checked his watch, 2:00 the morning. "There we go." Her voice came again. "Mama knows what you need." The tenderness in her voice was like a knife to his heart. This was what he'd wanted with Laura, this kind of love, this kind of devotion. He'd imagined coming home to a house filled with the sounds of children, a wife who would look at their babies the way this woman clearly looked at hers. Instead, he'd been married to a woman who saw children as inconvenient accessories and love as a transaction. The baby's cries intensified suddenly, and Nathan heard the woman's voice change, taking on a note of real concern. "Liam, baby, what's wrong? You're burning up." There was the sound of rapid movement, drawers opening, papers rustling. Nathan found himself sitting up straighter, suddenly alert. Okay, she was saying, and he could hear the barely controlled panic in her voice. "It's probably nothing. Just a little fever. Babies get fevers." But her voice was shaking now, and Nathan could hear her crying, not the gentle tears of exhaustion, but the terrified sobs of a mother who didn't know what to do. "Please, baby, please be okay," she whispered. "Mama doesn't know what she'll do if something happens to you." Nathan was on his feet before he realized it, his hand on the doorknob. Every instinct he had was screaming at him to help, to do something. This woman was clearly alone, clearly struggling, and her baby might be sick. But what could he do? He was a stranger, a man. She'd likely call the police if some random white guy started knocking on her door at 2 a.m. Still, he found himself stepping outside, the cold March air hitting him like a slap. Her door was closed, but he could still hear her voice through it, speaking rapidly on what sounded like a phone call. "Is this the nurse hotline? My baby has a fever, and I don't know he's 6 weeks old. I don't have a car right now." Nathan walked closer, not close enough to be threatening, but close enough to hear. "I understand you can't give medical advice over the phone, but I don't know what to do. I don't have insurance yet, and the emergency room will cost." She was quiet for a moment, clearly listening to instructions. "Okay, thank you. I'll figure something out." The call ended, and Nathan heard her sink into what sounded like a chair. "It's okay, Liam," she said, but her voice was breaking. "Mama's going to take care of you. We'll walk to the hospital if we have to. It's only a few miles." Nathan knocked softly on her door before he could talk himself out of it. The silence was immediate and complete. Then, very quietly, "Who is it?" "I'm Nathan. I'm staying next door. I couldn't help but overhear. Is your baby okay?" More silence then. "He has a fever. We're fine. I have a car." Nathan said simply, "If you need to get to a hospital, I don't know you." "No," Nathan agreed, "but your baby is sick, and it's 2:00 the morning, and you don't have a car. Sometimes strangers are all we have." He heard movement, and then the door opened just a crack, still secured by the chain. Through the gap, he could see part of her face, beautiful, exhausted, terrified. "Why would you help us?" she asked. Nathan thought about that for a moment. "Because 3 days ago, I thought I knew what mattered in life. Now, I realize I didn't know anything, but I know that babies shouldn't suffer because adults are too proud or too scared to accept help." She studied his face through the crack in the door. You're not some kind of predator or something?" "I'm just a guy who's having the worst week of his life, same as you," Nathan said honestly. "But I have a car, and your baby needs medical attention." After what felt like an eternity, she closed the door. Nathan heard the chain sliding back, and then she opened it fully. She was even more beautiful up close, maybe 25 or 26, with intelligent eyes that were red from crying and exhaustion. She was holding a tiny baby wrapped in a blue blanket, and even Nathan could see that the child's face was flushed with fever. "I'm Emily," she said quietly. "Nathan," he replied. "And that's Liam?" She nodded, looking down at her son with such love that Nathan felt something shift in his chest. "Let me get my keys," he said. Chapter 3. Coffee at midnight. The emergency room at 3 a.m. was a cathedral of human suffering. But Emily had never been more grateful for fluorescent lights and the sharp scent of disinfectant. Dr. Sophia Nguyen emerged from the examination room with the kind of smile that instantly dissolved the knot of terror in Emily's chest. Behind her, Nathan stood up from the waiting room chair where he'd remained vigilant for the past hour, his expensive suit wrinkled and his hair disheveled from anxious hands. "Liam is going to be fine," Dr. Nguyen said. and Emily's knees nearly buckled with relief. It's just a minor viral infection, very common in babies his age. His fever's already coming down with the medication we gave him. Are you sure? Emily asked, accepting Liam back into her arms. He did look better already, less flushed, sleeping peacefully. Absolutely. Keep him hydrated. Alternate infant acetaminophen and ibuprofen every 4 hours for the next couple of days, and call if his fever spikes above 101. But honestly, he's a strong, healthy baby. His reflexes are excellent. His breathing is clear. You're doing a phenomenal job with him. Emily's eyes filled with tears of relief. Thank you. I was so scared. First-time mom fears are completely normal. Dr. Wynne said kindly, you did exactly the right thing bringing him in. Better safe than sorry with babies this young. As Dr. Wynne handed Emily the discharge papers and a small bottle of infant medication, she glanced between Emily and Nathan with curious eyes. The father? She asked quietly. No, Emily said quickly. Just a friend. A neighbor, actually? Dr. Nguyen nodded, but Emily caught the meaningful look she gave Nathan, a look that clearly said she was impressed by his willingness to help. The ride back to the motel was quiet except for Liam's soft breathing from his car seat. Emily sat in the passenger seat of Nathan's Mercedes, very aware of the leather interior that probably cost more than she'd made in a year teaching, and tried to process what had just happened. This stranger, this well-dressed, obviously wealthy stranger, had just spent 3 hours in an emergency room with her and her baby. He'd handled all the paperwork while she focused on Liam, had quietly given his credit card to the billing department before she could protest, and had never once acted like he was doing her some enormous favor. I'll pay you back, she said finally as they pulled into the motel parking lot. The hospital bill. I don't know how much it was, but I'll pay you back. Nathan turned off the engine and looked at her. Let's talk about that later. Right now, let's just get Liam settled. I'm serious. I don't take charity. It's not charity, Nathan said simply. It's what neighbors do. Back in her room, Emily settled Liam in the makeshift crib she'd created using pillows and the bottom drawer of the small dresser. He was sleeping peacefully now, his fever broken, breathing easy. She touched his forehead one more time, cool and normal, and finally allowed herself to breathe. Thank you, she said to Nathan, who was hovering near the door like he wasn't sure whether he should leave. I mean it. I don't know what would have happened if... You would have figured it out, Nathan said with certainty. You would have walked to the hospital if you had to. I just provided the transportation. Emily studied his face in the dim light from the bedside lamp. He was handsome in an understated way, not flashy or obvious about it, but with good bones and kind eyes. His dark hair was starting to show gray at the temples, and there were lines around his eyes that spoke of either laughter or stress. Given the circumstances of their meeting, she suspected stress. I should let you get some sleep, Nathan said, but he made no move toward the door. I won't be sleeping anytime soon, Emily admitted. Too much adrenaline, too much relief. I know the feeling. Emily looked at him more carefully. Bad week for you too? Nathan's laugh was bitter. You could say that. Want some coffee? The words were out before Emily could stop them. I mean, it's terrible instant coffee, but it's caffeine. Nathan hesitated. Are you sure? It's late, and you've been through enough tonight. You just saved my son's life, Emily said. The least I can do is offer you bad coffee. They ended up sitting at the small table by the window, sharing a pot of coffee that was indeed terrible, and watching Liam sleep. The silence between them was surprisingly comfortable for two people who'd met 3 hours ago in a crisis. So, Emily said finally, what brings a man in a $3,000 suit to the Sunset Motel? Nathan nearly choked on his coffee. San. Ling? I taught elementary school. You learn to estimate the cost of everything parents wear to parent-teacher conferences. Emily smiled. Though most of my parents shopped at Target. Armani, Nathan admitted. Though it's probably ruined now. I've been wearing it for 3 days straight. That's either a very good story or a very bad one. Nathan was quiet for so long that Emily thought he wasn't going to answer. Then, I came home early from a business trip and found my wife in bed with my best friend. Oh. Emily felt something twist in her stomach. I'm sorry. The worst part is, I'm not even surprised. Looking back, I think I knew something was wrong for months. I just didn't want to see it. Emily recognized the tone in his voice, the same one she'd heard in her own when people asked about Ethan. How long were you married? 5 years. You? 2. Though he left when Liam was 3 weeks old, so I guess it was really over before that. Your husband left you with a 3-week-old baby? The incredulity in Nathan's voice was so genuine that Emily felt tears threaten again. It had been so long since someone had been outraged on her behalf. Ethan decided fatherhood wasn't for him, she said, trying to keep her voice steady, along with marriage, responsibility, or paying rent. Apparently, Jesus. He cleaned out our bank account and took everything valuable from our apartment. I got served with divorce papers the same day I got the eviction notice. What kind of man walks away from his own child? The kind who sees a baby as an inconvenience instead of a blessing? Emily said, looking over at Liam. His loss. Nathan followed her gaze to the sleeping baby. He's beautiful. He's everything, Emily said simply. I didn't know it was possible to love someone this much. It's terrifying and wonderful at the same time. You're a good mother. Anyone can see that. I'm trying to be. Some days, I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing. From what I saw tonight, you know exactly what you're doing, Nathan said. Seriously. You recognized he was sick. You got help? You stayed calm when it mattered. That's not instinct you can teach. Emily felt her cheeks warm. What about you? Do you and your wife have children? Ex-wife. As of 3 days ago. And no, Laura wasn't interested in children. Said they would interfere with her lifestyle. What kind of lifestyle was that? Nathan's smile was rueful. Expensive. She liked nice things, fancy restaurants, charity galas, where she could wear designer gowns and be photographed for the society pages. Children would have cramped her style. Did you want children? The question seemed to catch Nathan off guard. He was quiet for a moment, staring into his coffee cup. Yes, he said finally. I always imagined having a family, coming home to the sound of children playing, helping with homework, teaching them to ride bikes. He trailed off. Sounds foolish, doesn't it? It sounds wonderful, Emily said softly. It sounds like exactly what children need. Apparently not what Laura needed. Laura's an idiot. The words slipped out before Emily could stop them, and she immediately felt her face flush with embarrassment. I'm sorry. I don't know her. I shouldn't have said that. But Nathan was smiling, really smiling for the first time since she'd met him. No, you're probably right. I'm starting to think I never really knew her at all. What do you mean? Nathan leaned back in his chair, and Emily could see him making some kind of decision. We met at a charity auction, he said. I was there because my company was donating money for a children's hospital wing. She was there because her PR firm was handling the event. She was beautiful, sophisticated, knew all the right people. I thought I'd found my perfect match. What changed? Nothing changed. That's the problem. She was exactly the same person I met 5 years ago, someone who valued appearances over substance, status over character. I just convinced myself she'd grow to love me the way I loved her. Love isn't something you can convince someone to feel, Emily said gently. No, it's not. Nathan looked at her with something like wonder. You figured that out a lot younger than I did. I figured it out the hard way. Ethan married me because I was stable, reliable. I had a good job, my own apartment, no drama. He thought I'd be like a really good roommate who also happened to sleep with him. But you loved him. I loved who I thought he was, or who I hoped he could become. Emily shrugged. When Liam was born, and Ethan couldn't even hold him without complaining about the crying, I realized I'd been in love with a fantasy. At least you got Liam out of it. The best thing that ever happened to me, Emily agreed, glancing over at her sleeping son. What about you? Do you think you'll try again? Marriage, I mean. Nathan considered this. A week ago, I would have said never. The idea of trusting someone that completely again, of making myself that vulnerable, he shook his head. But tonight, watching you with Liam, seeing that kind of love, he met her eyes. Maybe I was just loving the wrong person. There was something in his voice that made Emily's pulse quicken, something in the way he was looking at her that made her suddenly aware of how intimate this felt, sitting here in the dim light, sharing their deepest disappointments with a virtual stranger. "We should probably get some sleep," she said, though she made no move to get up. "Probably," Nathan agreed, also not moving. "Thank you," Emily said again. "For tonight. For helping us. I know you didn't have to." "Yes, I did," Nathan said seriously. "Maybe not legally or socially, but yes, I did. I couldn't have lived with myself if I'd just listened to you struggle and done nothing. Most people would have. Most people aren't better than us. They're just luckier." Emily felt something shift in her chest at those words. This man understood something fundamental about life that Ethan had never grasped. That kindness wasn't weakness, that helping others wasn't foolish sentiment, but basic human decency. "I should go," Nathan said finally, standing up. "Let you get some rest." "Nathan." Emily stood too, suddenly not wanting him to leave. Would you like to have coffee again tomorrow? I mean, later today. Better coffee. There's a diner down the street." Nathan's smile was soft and genuine. "I'd like that very much." After he left, Emily checked on Liam one more time, then settled into the chair by the window. Outside, she could see the light still on in room 25, and somehow that made her feel less alone. For the first time in weeks, she fell asleep easily, and her dreams were filled with kind eyes and gentle voices, with the possibility that maybe, just maybe, the worst part of her life was behind her. Chapter 4. When Angels Wear Designer Shoes. Emily woke to the sound of gentle knocking, but when she opened the door, no one was there, just 3 bags of groceries sitting on her doorstep like divine intervention. She scanned the empty motel walkway, but the parking lot held only her beat-up Honda and the gleaming black Mercedes she was learning to recognize. Room 25's door remained firmly closed, though she could have sworn the curtain moved slightly. Liam was still sleeping peacefully, his fever completely gone, skin cool and normal to the touch. Emily had checked on him every hour through the night, but Dr. Wynne had been right. He was perfectly fine. The grocery bags contained everything she'd been rationing or doing without. Fresh fruit, real milk, organic baby formula, diapers in Liam's exact size, bread that wasn't stale, and sandwich meat that looked like it came from an actual deli. At the bottom of one bag was a container of what looked like homemade soup and a note in careful handwriting. "For new mothers who need their strength. Ruth." Emily's eyes filled with tears. She knew Ruth hadn't left these groceries. The older woman was kind, but she'd already done more than enough. This had Nathan's fingerprints all over it. From the organic baby formula to the expensive Greek yogurt. She knocked softly on the door to room 25. "Nathan," she called quietly. "I know you're in there." The door opened after a moment, and Nathan appeared, his hair damp from a shower, wearing jeans and a simple white t-shirt that somehow made him look younger and more approachable than the expensive suit had. "Good morning," he said, as if he hadn't just anonymously delivered enough groceries to feed her for a week. "The groceries," Emily said. "What groceries, Nathan?" He had the grace to look slightly sheepish. "Ruth mentioned that the diner down the street delivers groceries for some of the long-term residents. She must have thought you could use some supplies." "Ooh. And I suppose Ruth also knows Liam's exact diaper size and my preference for organic produce." "Lucky guess." Emily couldn't help but smile. "You can't keep doing this." "Doing what? I didn't do anything. I've been in my room all morning." "Nathan, I'm serious. I can't let you pay for everything." "Then don't let me," Nathan said simply. "Accept it as a gift from Ruth, who's probably the kindest person either of us have met in years." Before Emily could argue further, Liam's cry drifted from her room, not distressed, just his regular, "I'm awake and I want attention," announcement. "Coffee?" Nathan asked hopefully. "I bought a decent coffee maker yesterday. Much better than that instant stuff." An hour later, they were sitting at the small table in Nathan's room, which Emily noticed was identical to hers, except for the expensive laptop on the dresser and the stack of business papers that suggested he was still trying to manage his real life from this temporary refuge. Liam was lying on a blanket on the bed, kicking his legs and making the happy gurgling sounds that meant he was content with the world. Nathan kept glancing over at him with an expression Emily couldn't quite read. You can hold him if you want, she offered. I don't really know how, Nathan admitted. I've never spent much time around babies. It's not hard. Just support his head and neck. Emily showed him how to scoop Liam up properly, and Nathan held him with the careful concentration of someone handling something infinitely precious. Liam looked up at him with the wide, curious eyes of a baby who was still figuring out which faces belonged to people who mattered. Hey there, little man, Nathan said softly. And Liam responded with one of his rare, genuine smiles, the kind that lit up his whole face. He likes you, Emily said, feeling something warm and complicated unfold in her chest. How can you tell? The smile. He doesn't give those to just anyone. Mostly just me and Ruth so far. Nathan looked down at Liam with wonder. It's amazing, isn't it, how someone so small can be so complete, like he's already exactly who he's supposed to be. Ethan never talked about him like that, Emily said without thinking, then immediately regretted bringing up her ex-husband. Ethan's an idiot, Nathan said flatly, using Emily's own words from the night before. Anyone who can't see how incredible this little guy is doesn't deserve to be his father. The certainty in his voice made Emily's throat tight. He wanted me to give him up for adoption, said we were too young, too broke, that it wasn't fair to raise a kid in poverty. What did you say? That I'd rather raise him in a cardboard box with love than in a mansion without it? Emily touched Liam's tiny hand. I meant it. Good, Nathan said fiercely. He needs you. He's lucky to have you. The afternoon passed easily. Nathan worked on his laptop while Emily took care of Liam, but somehow they fell into a comfortable rhythm. Nathan would look up and make funny faces at Liam when he got fussy, or he'd hand Emily whatever she needed without being asked. It felt domestic in a way that should have been strange, but somehow wasn't. Around 4 o'clock, Liam started crying in earnest, the kind of persistent crying that meant he was legitimately upset about something. What's wrong, baby? Emily asked, checking his diaper, trying to feed him, attempting all her usual comfort measures. But Liam just kept crying, his face getting redder, and his wails more desperate. Is he sick again? Nathan asked, immediately alert. I don't think so. He doesn't feel warm. Emily rocked him, sang to him, walked with him, but nothing worked. After 30 minutes of nonstop crying, she was starting to panic. Something's wrong. Babies don't just cry like this for no reason. Should we call the doctor? I don't know. Maybe Emily's voice broke. I don't know what he needs. Nathan stood up decisively. Get his car seat. We're going back to the hospital. Nathan, I can't afford another emergency room visit. We'll figure that out later. Right now, Liam needs help, and you need peace of mind. The ride to the hospital was tense, with Liam's cries filling the car and Emily's anxiety reaching levels that made her feel sick. Nathan drove with the calm efficiency of someone accustomed to handling crises, but she could see the tension in his jaw. At the emergency room, they were seen quickly, whether because of Liam's distress or Nathan's obvious ability to pay. Emily wasn't sure and didn't care. Dr. Wynne appeared again, and Emily felt a surge of relief at seeing a familiar face. Let's see what's going on with this little guy, she said, taking Liam from Emily's arms with practiced ease. The examination was thorough, checking his ears, his throat, his belly, his reflexes. Liam continued to cry through most of it, but gradually began to calm as Dr. Nguyen worked. Well, she said finally, I have good news and embarrassing news. Embarrassing news? Emily asked. Liam is perfectly healthy. What he has is a classic case of baby gas, very painful for him, very distressing for parents, but ultimately harmless. Gas. Emily felt her face burn with embarrassment. I brought him to the emergency room for gas? Trust me, you're not the first parent to do this, and you won't be the last, Doctor. Nguyen said kindly. Baby digestive systems are still developing, and sometimes they get uncomfortable. Try bicycle movements with his legs, a warm bath, or infant gas drops. He'll be fine. As if to prove her point, Liam chose that moment to release a tiny burp, followed immediately by a contented sigh. His crying stopped instantly, and he looked around the room with bright, alert eyes, as if nothing had ever been wrong. Are you kidding me? Emily said, but she was laughing now, relief making her giddy. Babies, Doctor, Nguyen said with a grin. They're experts at making their parents crazy. In the car on the way back to the motel, Emily couldn't stop apologizing. "I'm so sorry," she said for the 5th time. "I completely overreacted. Gas. I can't believe I dragged you to the hospital because my son had gas." "You didn't overreact," Nathan said firmly. "You heard your baby in distress, and you did everything you could to help him. That's exactly what a good mother does. A good mother would have known the difference between a medical emergency and gas. A good mother doesn't take chances with her child's welfare. You did the right thing, Emily." His certainty made her feel better, but she was still mortified. "How much do you think this hospital visit cost for gas?" "It doesn't matter. It matters to me. I'm keeping track, Nathan. I'll pay you back every penny." Nathan was quiet for a moment. "What if I told you I didn't want you to pay me back? Then I'd tell you that's not how this works. I'm not a charity case. I know you're not. But what if I told you that helping you and Liam has been the best part of the worst week of my life? That watching you be a mother, seeing how much you love him, listening to you sing to him at night through these paper-thin walls, what if I told you that's the only thing that's made me feel human?" Emily stared at him, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. "What if I told you," Nathan continued, "that I'm not helping you because I feel sorry for you, but because being around you and Liam reminds me what actually matters in life?" They were back at the motel now, but neither of them made a move to get out of the car. "What are you saying?" Emily asked quietly. "I'm saying that I haven't felt this connected to anything in years. I'm saying that in 3 days, you and Liam have become more important to me than 5 years of marriage ever was." "Nathan, I know it's crazy. I know we barely know each other, but I also know that when I heard Liam crying tonight, my first instinct was to do whatever it took to make him feel better. When I see you worry about him, I want to fix everything that's making you scared." Emily looked at this man who had appeared in her life at exactly the moment she needed him most, who had spent 2 days helping her and asking for nothing in return, who held her son like he was made of spun glass. "It is crazy," she said softly. "I know," but he took a breath. "It's also the most honest thing anyone said to me in a long time." Nathan turned to look at her fully. "Emily, I want to keep helping you, not because you need rescuing, but because I want to be part of this, part of Liam's life, part of yours." "What does that mean exactly?" "I don't know yet," Nathan admitted. "I just know that I don't want this to end when we both check out of this motel and go back to our real lives." Emily thought about her real life, the job search she'd have to start, the apartment she'd have to find, the 1,000 impossible logistics of being a single mother with no resources. Then she looked at Nathan, who was waiting for her answer with hope and vulnerability written all over his face. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay, let's see where this goes." Nathan's smile was like sunrise breaking through clouds. "Really? Really? But Nathan?" "Yeah? Next time Liam has gas, we're trying the bicycle kicks first." Chapter 5. The Color of Trust. Emily's hands trembled as she read the text from her college friend Aisha. "Girl, I'm coming to check on you whether you want me to or not." It had been a week since she'd moved into the Sunset Motel, 5 days since Liam's fever had introduced her to Nathan, and exactly 12 hours since she'd agreed to explore their impossible connection. Now, staring at her phone while Liam napped peacefully in his makeshift crib, Emily felt panic clawing up her throat. Aisha had been her roommate at Howard University, her maid of honor, and the only person who'd consistently told her that Ethan was a selfish child masquerading as a man. Aisha was also a family therapist with finely tuned instincts for bad situations and dangerous men, though she worked in Baltimore, not D.C. There was no way she was going to approve of Emily's growing feelings for a mysterious stranger in an expensive suit. The knock came 2 hours later, sharp and insistent. Emily opened the door to find Aisha standing there with her arms crossed, wearing her "I'm about to save you from yourself" expression. "Aisha, don't you dare Aisha me," her friend said, pushing past Emily into the small room. "I've been calling you for 3 days. 3 days, Em. I was ready to file a missing persons report." Aisha was everything Emily wasn't. Tall where Emily was average height, light-skinned where Emily was deep bronze, boldly confident where Emily tended toward careful deliberation. She was also fiercely protective and had never softened a harsh truth when she thought Emily was making a mistake. "I'm sorry. I've been It's been complicated. Living in a motel with a newborn is definitely complicated, Aisha said, her voice softening as she looked around the small room. Oh, honey, it's really this bad. It's clean, Emily said defensively. Ruth keeps it clean, and it's safe. And it's what I can afford right now. Ruth, the manager? She's been incredibly kind. Aisha nodded approvingly. Good. You need people looking out for you. She moved to the bed where Liam was sleeping, her expression melting into the smile she reserved for babies. Look at him. He's gotten so big already. He's healthy, happy. That's what matters. And you? Are you healthy and happy? Before Emily could answer, there was a soft knock on the door. Through the thin wood, Nathan's voice called, Emily? I brought lunch if you're hungry. Aisha's eyebrows shot up. Who is that? That's Nathan, my neighbor. Your neighbor who brings you lunch? Emily opened the door to find Nathan standing there with a bag from what looked like an expensive deli, wearing khakis and a button-down shirt that probably cost more than Emily's monthly grocery budget. His smile faltered when he saw Aisha standing behind Emily with her arms crossed and her most intimidating expression. I'm sorry, he said immediately. I didn't realize you had company. No, it's fine, Emily said quickly. Nathan, this is my friend Aisha. Aisha, this is Nathan. He's been helping us. Helping how? Aisha asked, her voice carefully neutral. Nathan seemed to sense the undercurrent of suspicion. I live next door. When Liam was sick the other night, I gave them a ride to the hospital. That's very neighborly of you, Aisha said, and Emily winced at the pointed emphasis on neighborly. I should go, Nathan said, setting the bag of food on Emily's table. Nice to meet you, Aisha. After he left, Aisha turned to Emily with raised eyebrows. Okay, spill everything. Now, Emily told her the whole story. Ethan's abandonment, losing the apartment, ending up at the motel, Liam's fever, Nathan's kindness. She left out the part about her growing feelings, but she had a sinking suspicion that Aisha could read between the lines. So, this rich white boy just happened to be in the room next door when you needed help, Aisha asked when Emily finished. It's not like that. What's it like then? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like a vulnerable woman with a baby getting swept off her feet by a man with money and a savior complex. Nathan's not like that, Emily protested. But even as she said it, she could see how it looked from the outside. Emily, honey, listen to yourself. You've known this man for 5 days. 5 days. And you're already defending him like you're in love with him. The words hit too close to home, and Emily felt her cheeks burn. I'm not. Oh my God. You are. You're falling for him. Aisha sat down heavily in one of the chairs. Please tell me you're not that desperate. Desperate? You're homeless, broke, and alone with a newborn baby. Enter the handsome stranger with money and a fancy car playing knight in shining armor. It's like something out of a romance novel, but this is real life. You don't know him, Emily said, anger beginning to simmer in her chest. And neither do you. That's my point. What do you actually know about this guy? His last name, where he works, why he's living in a motel instead of whatever mansion he obviously belongs in. Emily opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. She realized with growing unease that she really didn't know much about Nathan beyond what he'd told her, and people could lie. His wife left him, she said weakly. Says who? Him? Aisha leaned forward. Emily, I see this all the time in my work. Women in vulnerable situations who get involved with men who seem like salvation but turn out to be predators. Nathan's not a predator. How do you know? Because he bought you groceries? Because he paid some hospital bills? Honey, that's exactly how predators work. They find women who are desperate, and they love bomb them until those women are so grateful they'll do anything. Emily felt sick. Was that what was happening? Had she been so desperate for kindness that she'd mistaken manipulation for genuine feeling? I need you to promise me something, Aisha said, reaching for Emily's hands. Promise me you'll be careful, that you won't make any big decisions about this guy until you know more about who he really is. Before Emily could answer, Liam woke up with a cry that quickly escalated to full-scale distress. Emily picked him up, but he was clearly hungry and angry about it. "I need to feed him," she said. "Go ahead. I'll make myself some coffee." Emily settled into the chair by the window to nurse Liam, but he was fussy and wouldn't latch properly. Her stress was affecting her milk supply, and Liam's frustration was mounting. "Come on, baby," she murmured, trying again. "Please, just eat." But Liam continued to cry, arching his back and refusing to nurse. Emily felt tears of frustration start to flow. "He's not usually like this," she said to Aisha. "Something's wrong. Maybe he's picking up on your stress." Babies are sensitive to their mother's emotions. That made Emily feel even worse. Not only was she a potentially naive fool who'd fallen for the first man to show her kindness, but now her poor judgment was affecting her ability to care for her son. There was another knock on the door, and Nathan's voice came through again. "Emily, is everything okay? I can hear Liam crying." "We're fine," Emily called. But her voice was shaky. The door opened anyway. She'd forgotten to lock it, and Nathan stepped inside, taking in the scene. Emily crying while trying to calm a screaming baby. Aisha watching with disapproving eyes. "What can I do?" Nathan asked, and the simple offer broke something in Emily's chest. "Nothing," Aisha said firmly. "This is family business." But Nathan ignored her, moving to Emily's side. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward Liam. Emily handed him over, and almost immediately Liam began to calm. Nathan held him expertly now, having learned over the past few days, and began the gentle bouncing motion that Liam loved. "Hey there, little man," Nathan said softly. "What's all this fuss about?" Within minutes, Liam was quiet, looking up at Nathan with those trusting baby eyes. "How did you do that?" Emily asked. "Sometimes babies just need a different pair of arms," Nathan said. "Here, try nursing him now." This time, Liam latched immediately and began eating contentedly. "Thank you," Emily said quietly. "Always," Nathan replied, and the simple word held so much promise that Emily felt her heart skip. Aisha watched this entire exchange with narrowed eyes. After Nathan left again, she turned to Emily with a look that was part concern, part anger. "That man just walked into your room without permission," she said. "I forgot to lock the door. He assumed he had the right to enter. He assumed he had the right to handle your baby without being asked. Those are red flags, Emily. He was trying to help. Maybe. Or maybe he was establishing dominance, showing me that he has more influence over your baby than I do, more access to your life than your oldest friend." Emily felt confusion and doubt swirl in her stomach. "You're reading too much into it." "Am I? Or are you not reading enough into it because you're too grateful to think clearly?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Emily looked down at Liam, who was nursing peacefully now, completely content. Was she being naive? Was her judgment compromised by desperation and loneliness? "I want you to do something for me," Aisha said. "I want you to find out who this guy really is, his full name, where he works, whether he's actually divorced or just separated or lying completely. Can you do that, Emily? For Liam's sake, if not for your own." Emily met her friend's eyes and saw genuine fear there. Aisha wasn't trying to ruin her happiness. She was trying to protect her. "Okay," Emily said finally. "I'll find out more about him." "Good. And until you do, please be careful. Don't let him get too close. Don't let him make himself indispensable. Keep your guard up." After Aisha left, Emily sat in the growing darkness of her motel room, holding Liam and feeling more confused than ever. Everything Aisha had said made logical sense, but it also felt wrong in ways she couldn't articulate. Nathan had never made her feel pressured or obligated. He'd never asked for anything in return for his help. When he looked at her, she didn't see calculation or manipulation. She saw genuine care, real affection. But then again, if she was that easy to fool, would she even recognize manipulation when she saw it? That night, as she heard Nathan moving around in the room next door, Emily made a decision. She would find out who Nathaniel Brooks really was. She owed it to Liam and to herself to know the truth. She just hoped the truth wouldn't destroy the first good thing that had happened to her since Liam was born. Chapter 6. Secrets in the Shadows. The Google search results for Nathaniel Brooks in Washington, D.C. struck Emily like lightning, illuminating everything while burning her world to the ground. She stared at her phone screen in the dim motel room while Liam slept peacefully beside her. The first result was a Washington Post business article from 6 months ago featuring a photo that was unmistakably Nathan, though he appeared transformed, polished, powerful, wearing a suit that likely cost more than her car. Real estate mogul Nathaniel Brooks III closes $50 million mixed-use development deal, the headline read. $50 million. Emily's hands trembled as she scrolled through article after article. Nathan wasn't just wealthy, he was Washington elite wealthy. His company, Brooks Development, had been behind some of the biggest urban renewal projects in the D.C. area. His personal net worth was estimated in the hundreds of millions. The photos showed him at charity galas, political fundraisers, society events, always with the same woman, a stunning blonde with sharp cheekbones and the kind of smile that never reached her eyes, Laura Brooks. According to the captions, public relations executive, philanthropist, socialite. Emily found their wedding announcement from 5 years ago in the post-style section. The write-up read like something from a fairy tale. 2 prominent D.C. families joining together, a reception at the Kennedy Center, a honeymoon in the Maldives. The bride's dress was Vera Wang. The flowers alone probably cost more than Emily made in a year. But it was the most recent article that made her blood run cold, dated just 5 days ago. Power couple Brooks announced separation. The article was brief but devastating. Real estate developer Nathaniel Brooks III and public relations executive Laura Brooks have announced their intention to divorce after 5 years of marriage. The couple cited irreconcilable differences. Mrs. Brooks will retain her maiden name for professional purposes. Both parties declined to comment further. 5 days ago, Nathan had been separated from his wife for exactly 5 days when he'd moved into the motel room next to hers. Emily's mind raced as she processed this information. Everything he'd told her was true, but the scale of it was so much bigger than she'd imagined. He wasn't just some successful businessman going through a divorce. He was Washington royalty, slumming it in a cheap motel for reasons she couldn't begin to understand. Why would a man worth hundreds of millions of dollars stay in a place like the Sunset Motel? Why would he care about helping a broke single mother and her baby? What could she possibly offer someone who could afford anything he wanted? The doubts Aisha had planted grew into full-blown paranoia. Was this some kind of game for him? Was she entertainment, a distraction from his real life? When he got bored, or when his divorce was finalized, would he disappear back to his penthouse and leave her with a broken heart and false hopes? Emily was so lost in her spiraling thoughts that she almost missed the sound of footsteps outside her door, heavy, unsteady footsteps that stopped right outside her room. Emily, the voice was slurred, angry, and heartbreakingly familiar. Emily, I know you're in there. Ethan. Emily's blood turned to ice. She grabbed her phone and silently moved to the window, peering through the curtain. Ethan was standing in the parking lot, swaying slightly, clearly drunk. He was pounding on her door with one fist and holding what looked like a bottle in the other. Open the door, Em. I want to see my son. Liam stirred at the sound but didn't wake fully. Emily held her breath, hoping Ethan would give up and leave. I know you're in there, Ethan shouted louder. Ruth told me which room. You can't keep my kid from me. Emily's heart sank. Ruth would never willingly give out that information, which meant Ethan had either tricked her or threatened her. Either way, Emily's safe haven had been compromised. Emily, I'm not leaving until you open this door. More pounding. Loud enough that Liam woke with a startled cry. Emily quickly picked him up, trying to soothe him while her mind raced through options. She could call the police, but Ethan wasn't technically doing anything illegal yet. She could try to sneak out the back, but there was no back exit from the motel rooms. That's right. Wake him up. Ethan's voice was getting more aggressive. Wake up my son so he can see his daddy. Emily heard another door open, and Nathan's voice cut through the night air. Excuse me. It's pretty late for this kind of noise. Who the hell are you? Ethan demanded. I'm the neighbor who's trying to sleep. Maybe you could take this somewhere else. Emily pressed her face to the window, watching the confrontation unfold. Nathan had positioned himself between Ethan and her door, and even though he was shorter and lighter than Ethan, There was something in his stance that spoke of absolute confidence. "This is family business," Ethan slurred. "My wife and kid are in there." "Ex-wife," Nathan corrected calmly. "And if she wanted to talk to you, I imagine she would have opened the door by now." "You don't know anything about it, rich boy." Emily saw Ethan notice Nathan's expensive clothes, saw the calculation in his eyes. Ethan had always been good at reading people's social status and adjusting his behavior accordingly. Usually, he became more deferential around obviously wealthy people. Tonight, drunk and angry, he seemed to be going in the opposite direction. "I know enough," Nathan said. "I know it's 2:00 the morning, and you're drunk, and you're frightening a woman and a baby. That woman is my wife, and that baby is my son, and I got rights. You have the right to file appropriate legal paperwork through the court system," Nathan said, with the kind of precise diction that suggested he'd dealt with legal matters before. "You don't have the right to show up drunk and pound on doors in the middle of the night." Ethan stepped closer to Nathan, using his height advantage to try to intimidate. "You sleeping with my wife, rich boy? That why you're so interested in protecting her?" Emily saw Nathan's jaw tighten, but his voice remained level. "I think you should leave. I think you should mind your own business." "She is my business." The words hit Emily like a physical blow. The possessiveness in Nathan's voice, the casual way he'd claimed ownership over her situation, it was exactly what Aisha had warned her about. "Oh, I see how it is," Ethan said with a nasty laugh. "You found yourself a nice little charity case. Poor black girl with a baby. Probably real grateful for whatever you're willing to throw her way." "Stop talking," Nathan said, and for the first time, there was real danger in his voice. Truth hurt. "You like playing savior to the poor folks? Makes you feel like a big man?" Emily saw Nathan's hands clench into fists, saw him take a step forward that made Ethan instinctively step back despite his size advantage. "I'm going to say this once," Nathan said quietly. "Leave now. Don't come back. If you want to see your son, do it through lawyers and courts like a civilized human being." "You threatening me?" "I'm educating you. This motel has security cameras. You're drunk. You're on private property, and you're harassing the tenants. One phone call brings the police, and I guarantee you don't want to explain to a family court judge why you were arrested for drunk and disorderly conduct outside your infant son's bedroom." Ethan wavered, clearly trying to process this through his alcohol-clouded brain. Emily could see him weighing his options, calculating whether his anger was worth the potential legal consequences. "This ain't over," he finally said, but he was already backing toward his car. "Yes, it is," Nathan replied. "It's been over since you walked out on your family." After Ethan drove away, weaving slightly as he pulled out of the parking lot, Nathan stood outside Emily's door for a long moment. "Emily," he called softly, "are you okay?" Emily opened the door, still holding Liam, her hands shaking with residual adrenaline. "Thank you," she said. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't. Are you hurt? Did he hurt you?" "No, he never came inside, but he was so angry and drunk, and I was scared." Nathan stepped closer, and Emily caught a whiff of his cologne. Expensive, subtle, the kind of scent that probably came from a bottle that cost more than her rent. "He won't be back tonight," Nathan said. "But Emily, you need to get a restraining order tomorrow. This can't happen again." "I know. I don't have money for a lawyer, and I don't know how the legal system works, and I'll help you. I know lawyers, good ones." And there it was again. The easy assumption that his money could solve her problems, the casual offer of expensive help. Emily thought about the Google search results, about the society photos, about Aisha's warnings. "Why?" she asked suddenly. "Why what? Why are you helping me? Why do you care what happens to me and Liam?" Nathan seemed taken aback by the directness of the question. "I told you. I care about you both. But why? I looked you up, Nathan. I know who you are. You're worth hundreds of millions of dollars. You could be staying anywhere, doing anything. Why are you in this motel? Why are you interested in a broke single mother you met 5 days ago?" She watched his face carefully, looking for any sign of deception or calculation. Instead, she saw something that looked like pain. "You looked me up," he said quietly. "I had to. My friend made me realize I don't actually know anything about you." "And what did you find?" that you're way more successful than you let on, that your divorce was announced in the Washington Post, that you move in circles I can't even imagine." Nathan was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. "And now you think I'm what? Playing games with you? Amusing myself? I don't know what to think. Why would someone like you want anything to do with someone like me?" "Someone like you?" Nathan repeated, his voice getting harder. "What does that mean exactly?" "You know what it means. I have nothing to offer you, nothing you can't get somewhere else. Better, from people in your own social class. Is that really what you think? That I'm here because I'm bored or because I get some kind of thrill from helping poor people?" "I don't know," Emily said, and she hated how small her voice sounded. "Maybe." Nathan stared at her for a long moment, and Emily saw something die in his eyes. "I see," he said finally. "Well, thank you for your honesty." He turned to go back to his room, and Emily felt panic rise in her throat. "Nathan, wait. No, it's fine. You're probably right to be suspicious. I'm sure your friend gave you excellent advice about men like me. That's not—" "Good night, Emily. Lock your door." He went into his room and closed the door firmly behind him, leaving Emily standing alone in the parking lot with Liam in her arms and the taste of regret bitter in her mouth. She'd wanted the truth, and now she had it. Nathan was exactly who the Google search said. He was wealthy, powerful, connected. The question was whether that made him dangerous or just hopelessly out of her league. As she locked her door and settled Liam back into his makeshift crib, Emily realized that knowing Nathan's net worth hadn't answered any of the questions that actually mattered. She still didn't know why he was here, why he cared, or whether his feelings for her were real. All she knew was that pushing him away had felt like tearing something vital out of her chest, and the silence from room 25 was deafening. Chapter 7. Hearts don't lie, even when we do. For 3 days, the silence from room 25 was so absolute that Emily began to wonder if Nathan had vanished back to his real life, leaving her with nothing but Google search results and the ghost of his wounded expression. She hadn't glimpsed him once since their confrontation in the parking lot. No coffee mysteriously appeared at her door. No groceries materialized. No gentle knock when Liam was restless. It was as if Nathan Brooks had never existed, except for the black Mercedes that remained parked outside his room like an expensive monument to what she'd destroyed. Emily told herself this was for the best. Aisha had been right. She was too vulnerable, too grateful, too ready to mistake charity for genuine feeling. A man with Nathan's resources didn't need her for anything real. When the novelty wore off, when his divorce was finalized and his life returned to normal, he would have moved on anyway. But as she walked Liam around the parking lot at 2:00 a.m., because he was teething and miserable, she found herself staring at Nathan's dark window and wondering if she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. On Thursday morning, Ruth knocked on her door with a thermos of coffee and a knowing look. "Honey, you and that man need to stop acting like children and talk to each other," she said without preamble. "I don't know what you mean," Emily lied. "Child, I've been managing this place for 15 years. I know the sound of two people being miserable in rooms next to each other. Whatever happened between you two, fix it. It's complicated, Ruth. Love always is, but that man hasn't left his room except to go get food, and you've been crying when you think nobody can hear. Meanwhile, that beautiful baby is picking up on all this tension." Emily glanced at Liam, who was indeed more fussy than usual, as if he could sense the emotional turmoil around him. "He's too good for me," Emily said quietly. "He's rich, Ruth. Really rich. I looked him up online." Ruth snorted. "Honey, I knew that boy had money the minute he walked in here. You think I don't know a $50,000 watch when I see one? Vi sicuramente nolla." Emily's voice squeaked. "At least, but you know what I also see? I see a man who talks to you like you hung the moon. I see someone who holds that baby like he's made of gold. I see a person who's been happier in the past week than he probably has been in years. The only difference between you and him is the size of your bank accounts. And honey, that's just numbers on paper. What matters is what's in here." Ruth tapped her chest over her heart. "Don't let fear ruin something beautiful." After Ruth left, Emily spent the day wrestling with doubt and longing in equal measure. Every sound from next door made her heart race. hoping Nathan might reach out. But the silence stretched on, and by evening, she felt hollowed out with regret. That's when the rain started. It began as a gentle patter but escalated quickly into a full-blown storm. By 8 o'clock, thunder was shaking the windows, and lightning was turning the parking lot into a disco of shadows. Liam, who was already cranky from teething, became inconsolable. Emily tried everything, feeding him, walking him, singing to him, giving him teething toys. But the combination of his discomfort and the loud storm had him in full meltdown mode. His cries were piercing, desperate, the kind that made Emily feel like she was failing as a mother. "Please, baby," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Mama doesn't know what else to do. She was walking him around the small room for the 100th time when a particularly loud clap of thunder made Liam's screams reach a new level of distress. Through her own tears and exhaustion, Emily heard something that made her freeze. Piano music, soft, gentle, barely audible over the storm, and Liam's crying, but unmistakably coming from room 25. Someone was playing piano, and the melody was hauntingly beautiful. A lullaby she didn't recognize, but that seemed to speak directly to her fractured heart. Emily moved closer to the wall, still holding the screaming Liam, and pressed her ear against it. The music was clearer here, and she realized Nathan must have some kind of electronic keyboard in his room. The melody was complex but soothing, the kind of thing that spoke of years of training and genuine talent. Almost miraculously, Liam's cries began to quiet, not stop entirely, but fade to sniffles and hiccups, as if he, too, was listening to the music. "You hear that, baby?" Emily whispered. "Someone's playing just for you." The lullaby continued for nearly 10 minutes, gentle and repetitive, and incredibly beautiful. By the time it ended, Liam was asleep in Emily's arms, finally peaceful. Emily stood by the wall for a long time after the music stopped, holding her sleeping son and feeling something break open in her chest. Nathan was still there, still caring enough to play lullabies through the wall when he heard Liam crying, still trying to help, even though she'd accused him of having ulterior motives. Before she could lose her courage, Emily settled Liam in his crib and knocked softly on Nathan's door. "Nathan," she called quietly, "I know you're there." Silence. The music was beautiful. Liam loved it. More silence. But Emily thought she heard movement inside. "I owe you an apology," she said to the closed door. "I was scared, and I lashed out, and I said things I didn't mean." Still nothing. "Please," Emily said, her voice breaking. "I know I hurt you, but I need to explain." After what felt like an eternity, the door opened. Nathan stood there in jeans and a t-shirt. His hair messed up like he'd been running his hands through it. He looked tired, guarded, nothing like the open, warm man she'd come to know. "What do you want, Emily?" To apologize, to explain. She took a shaky breath. "To tell you the truth." Nathan studied her face for a moment, then stepped aside to let her into his room. The space was identical to hers, but felt completely different. There was indeed a small electronic keyboard set up on the table, along with a laptop and stacks of papers. The bed was unmade, and there were empty takeout containers that suggested he'd been living on delivered food for days. "You play piano," Emily said. "Since I was 5. My mother insisted on lessons. It was beautiful. You calmed Liam when I couldn't." Nathan shrugged. "I heard him crying. I thought it might help." Emily felt fresh tears threaten. Even when he was angry with her, even when she'd hurt him, he'd still tried to help her son. "Nathan, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what I said, for how I acted." "Which part are you sorry for? Looking me up, finding out who I really am, or deciding that my bank account makes me untrustworthy?" "I'm sorry for being afraid," Emily said quietly. "I'm sorry for letting other people's voices matter more than my own instincts. Your friend was just looking out for you." "She was. But she doesn't know you. And I." Emily struggled to find the words. "I was scared because what we have feels too good to be real. I was scared because I'm falling in love with you, and that terrifies me." Nathan went very still. "What did you say?" "I said I'm falling in love with you," Emily repeated, her voice stronger now. "I'm falling in love with a man who plays lullabies for my son through motel walls, who drives us to the hospital at 2. 0-inch the morning without being asked, who steps between my drunk ex-husband and my door like it's the most natural thing in the world. I'm falling in love with someone who holds Liam like he's precious, who makes me feel like I'm not doing this alone anymore, who looks at me like I'm beautiful, even when I'm exhausted and scared and have nothing to offer. You have everything to offer, Nathan said fiercely. Do I? Because when I found out who you really are, all I could think was that I'm nothing compared to your real life. I'm a broke single mother living in a motel. You're Washington elite. You belong to a world I can't even imagine. That world is expletive, Nathan said with more vehemence than she'd ever heard from him. That world is full of people like Laura, who measure everything by status and money, and who's wearing what designer dress to which charity gala. That world is why I didn't know what real love looked like until I heard you singing to your son. Emily stared at him. What? Do you want to know why I'm really here, Emily? Why I've been hiding in this motel instead of fighting for my company or my penthouse or any of the things that used to matter to me? She nodded. Because when I found Laura with Ryan, when my marriage exploded and my business partnership imploded and my entire life fell apart, I realized I had no idea who I was underneath all the money and status. I realized I'd built my entire identity around things that could be taken away. Nathan moved to the window, looking out at the storm. I came here because I needed to figure out who Nathaniel Brooks is when you strip away the net worth and the real estate empire and the social connections. And then I met you. Nathan, you want to know what you have to offer? He turned back to her, his eyes bright with unshed tears. You have authenticity. You have the kind of love that would walk to a hospital at 2, 0-inch the morning if it meant helping your child. You have strength I've never seen before. The strength to start over with nothing, to trust a stranger, to keep going when everything falls apart. That's not special. That's just survival. No, it's not. It's grace under pressure. It's choosing hope when you have every reason to despair. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever witnessed. Emily felt tears spill over. I was so scared you were just playing games, that I was some kind of charity project. And I was scared you'd figure out that I need you more than you need me. Nathan stepped closer. Emily, without you and Liam, I'm just a rich guy with daddy issues and a failed marriage. That's not true, is it? You've shown me what real love looks like, what family looks like, what actually matters. Before I met you, I thought success was about building bigger buildings and making more money. Now I know it's about coming home to someone who's genuinely happy to see you. The rain was still pounding against the windows, but inside the room, everything felt still and charged with possibility. Where does this leave us? Emily asked quietly. I don't know, Nathan admitted. I know I love you. I know I love Liam. I know I want to build something real with you. Something that has nothing to do with money or status or what anyone else thinks. Even though we're from completely different worlds, we're not from different worlds. We're both from the world of people who've been hurt and are trying to figure out how to trust again. Everything else is just details. Emily looked at this man who'd had every material advantage in life, but had still ended up broken and alone in a motel room just like her. She thought about Aisha's warnings, about the very real challenges their different backgrounds would create. But she also thought about the way Nathan looked at Liam, the way he'd played lullabies through the wall, the way he'd stood up to Ethan without being asked. I love you too, she said quietly. Nathan crossed the room in 2 strides and cupped her face in his hands. Are you sure? Because once we do this, once we try to build something together, I'm all in. I don't want to be your safety net or your financial solution. I want to be your partner. What does that look like? I don't know. We figure it out as we go. Nathan's thumb traced along her cheekbone. I want forever with you. I want to adopt Liam officially. I want to have more children together. I want to wake up next to you when we're 60 and still feel like the luckiest man alive. That's a big leap from a week in a motel. Sometimes love doesn't follow a reasonable timeline. Emily searched his face and saw nothing but sincerity, no calculation, no hidden agenda, just a man who'd been as broken as she was and had somehow found healing in their impossible connection. Okay, she whispered. Okay, let's figure it out as we go. When Nathan kissed her, it was like coming home to a place she'd never been but had always been searching for. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside, wrapped in each other's arms, Emily finally understood what it meant to choose love over fear. They were going to be okay. More than okay. They were going to be extraordinary. Chapter 8. The Courage to Fall. Emily woke in Nathan's arms for the first time to the sound of someone hammering on the motel office door like they intended to break it down. For a disorienting moment, she was confused by the unfamiliar room, by the weight of Nathan's arm around her waist, by the lingering scent of his cologne on the pillow beneath her cheek. They'd talked until sunrise after their emotional reconciliation, finally falling asleep, fully clothed above the covers, holding each other like anchors in a storm. The pounding continued, followed by muffled shouting. Emily checked her phone. 8:30 a.m. Liam was still sleeping peacefully in his portable crib, which they'd moved to Nathan's room sometime during the night. "What the hell?" Nathan mumbled, sitting up and running a hand through his disheveled hair. Through the thin walls, they could hear Ruth's voice, calm but firm. "Sir, I need you to lower your voice. You're disturbing the other guests." "I don't give a damn about the other guests. I want to know which room my wife is in." "Ethan." Emily's blood turned to ice. "Sir, I cannot give out information about our guests. If you'd like to contact someone staying here, you're welcome to call them yourself. Look, lady, I know she's here. I saw her car in the parking lot. Room 24, right? That's where she is." Emily was already out of bed, moving toward the window to peer through the curtain. Ethan was standing outside the motel office, but he wasn't alone. There was another man with him, older, wearing a cheap suit and carrying a briefcase. Behind them was a woman Emily didn't recognize, taking notes on a clipboard. "Nathan," Emily whispered urgently. "There are 3 of them." Ethan brought people with him. Nathan was beside her in an instant, looking over her shoulder. His expression darkened when he saw the scene outside. "The man in the suit is probably a lawyer," he said grimly. "And the woman could be a social worker." "A social worker? Why would Ethan bring a social worker?" Before Nathan could answer, there was a sharp knock on their door. "Emily Larson?" The voice was female, professional, unfamiliar. "This is Linda Hayes from DC Child and Family Services. I need to speak with you regarding a custody concern that's been filed." Emily felt the world tilt sideways. "Custody concern. I have a court order here requiring a welfare check on the minor child, Liam Reed. Please open the door, Miss Larson." Emily looked at Nathan in panic. "What do I do?" "Open the door," Nathan said quietly. "Running will only make things worse." "But Emily, let me do the talking." "You can't. This isn't your—" "Yes, it is. We're together now, remember? What affects you affects me." Emily's hands shook as she unlocked the door. The woman standing outside was middle-aged, wearing a gray pantsuit and the kind of expression that suggested she'd seen everything twice. Behind her, Ethan stood with his arms crossed, looking smugly satisfied. "Miss Larson, I'm Linda Hayes, caseworker with DC Child and Family Services." The woman held up an official-looking badge. "I need to conduct a welfare check on your son based on a report filed yesterday evening." "What kind of report?" Emily managed to ask. Linda consulted her clipboard. "Miss Larson, the report alleges that you're living in substandard conditions, that you've been cohabitating with unknown individuals, and that you may be engaging in prostitution to support yourself and your child." "What?" Emily's voice cracked with shock and outrage. "It's completely fabricated," Nathan said smoothly, stepping beside Emily. "I'm Nathaniel Brooks, Emily's partner. I'd be happy to address any questions you might have." Linda's eyes widened slightly at Nathan's appearance, his expensive clothes, his confident bearing, the unmistakable aura of wealth and education. "And you are?" she asked, making notes. "As I said, Emily's partner. I'm also a successful businessman and a character witness for both Emily and Liam's well-being." Ethan stepped forward, his face twisted with anger. "Partner? Emily, you've been shacking up with some random guy you just met, and you want to tell me you're a fit mother?" "Mr. Reed," Linda said firmly, "please let me handle this." "Miss Larson, may I see the child?" Emily's protective instincts flared. "He's sleeping. I don't want to wake him up." I'm afraid I need to see that he's safe and healthy. It will just take a moment." With no choice, Emily led the small group into Nathan's room. Liam was indeed sleeping peacefully in his crib, his cheeks rosy with health, surrounded by clean blankets and expensive baby supplies that Nathan had quietly accumulated over the past week. Linda approached the crib and made notes as she observed Liam. "He appears well-nourished and clean." "How old is he?" 7 weeks, Emily said, her voice barely steady. "And his father is Mr. Reed?" "Biologically, yes. But Ethan abandoned us when Liam was 3 weeks old." "That's not true," Ethan protested. "I left temporarily because Emily was being unreasonable about our financial situation. I've been trying to reconnect with my son ever since." "By showing up drunk at 2 in the morning?" Nathan asked coolly. Linda's head snapped up. "Mr. Reed appeared here intoxicated?" 3 nights ago, Nathan confirmed. "I intervened when he became belligerent and was frightening Emily and the baby." "He's lying," Ethan said quickly. "I came here to see my son, and this guy threatened me. Rich boy thinks he can buy himself a ready-made family and push out the real father." "That's enough," Linda said sharply. She turned back to Emily. "Miss Larson, how long have you been residing at this motel?" "About a week and a half." "And prior to that?" Emily felt her cheeks burn with shame. "Ethan cleaned out our apartment and our bank account. We were evicted." "So, you've been homeless?" "We've had safe, clean shelter," Nathan interjected. "I can provide character references, financial records, whatever documentation you need to verify that Emily and Liam are being well cared for." Linda studied Nathan with undisguised curiosity. "What is your relationship to this family, Mr. Brooks?" "I love them," Nathan said simply, "and I intend to marry Emily and formally adopt Liam when the time is right." The words hit Emily like a lightning bolt. They'd talked about forever, but this was the first time Nathan had said anything so concrete in front of other people. Ethan exploded. "Adopt my son, over my dead body. I got rights." "Actually," said the lawyer, who'd been silent until now, "you may have fewer rights than you think, Mr. Reed. Abandoning a minor child, especially an infant, is grounds for termination of parental rights in Washington, D.C. I didn't abandon him. I was trying to figure out our financial situation. By taking all the money and leaving your wife and newborn son homeless?" The lawyer, who Emily now realized wasn't Ethan's lawyer but someone else entirely, raised an eyebrow. "That's an interesting interpretation of the word figuring." Linda was watching this exchange with growing interest. "I'm sorry, you are?" "James Franklin, family law attorney. I represent Mr. Brooks and, by extension, Miss Reckoned, Larson and her son's interests." Emily stared at James in shock. When had Nathan called a lawyer? How had he arranged this? James continued smoothly. "I have documentation here showing that Mr. Reed removed all marital assets from the family's accounts approximately 4 weeks ago, leaving Miss Larson with no financial resources while she was still recovering from childbirth. I also have witness statements regarding his intoxicated appearance at this location 3 nights ago." That's Ethan started, then stopped, clearly realizing he was out of his depth. Linda looked between all the adults in the room, then back at the sleeping baby. "Mr. Reed, the report you filed suggests that you're concerned about your son's welfare. However, what I'm seeing is a healthy, well-cared-for infant in a clean, safe environment with a mother who is clearly devoted to him and a partner who appears to be providing additional support and stability. But they're living in a motel," Ethan protested. "Temporary housing is not child abuse," Linda replied dryly. "Abandoning your family and leaving them destitute, however, raises serious questions about your fitness as a parent." Emily watched Ethan's face cycle through anger, confusion, and growing panic as he realized his plan was backfiring spectacularly. "Furthermore," James added, pulling documents from his briefcase, "I have here a preliminary restraining order against Mr. Reed filed this morning based on his harassment of Miss Larson and threatening behavior toward the minor child." "Threatening behavior?" Ethan sputtered. "I never threatened anybody." "Showing up intoxicated and demanding entry to a residence containing an infant could certainly be construed as threatening," James said calmly. Linda was making extensive notes. Miss Larson, do you feel that you and your son are safe and well cared for in your current situation? Emily looked around the room at Nathan, who was watching her with love and support written all over his face. At James, who was clearly an expensive lawyer Nathan had somehow retained on her behalf. At Liam, sleeping peacefully, despite all the drama swirling around him. Yes, she said firmly. We are safer and better cared for than we've ever been. And Mr. Brooks, you're prepared to take on the responsibility of helping to raise another man's child? He's not another man's child, Nathan said, looking directly at Ethan. He's the son of the woman I love, which makes him my son in every way that matters. Ethan Reed contributed genetic material. That doesn't make him a father. The room fell silent except for Liam's soft breathing. Finally, Linda closed her notebook. Mr. Reed, based on my observation today, I see no evidence of neglect or abuse. Your son appears healthy and well cared for. Miss Larson appears to be a devoted mother with adequate support systems in place. However, I will be scheduling a follow-up visit in 2 weeks to ensure continued stability. But Ethan started. Furthermore, Linda continued, I will be recommending that you complete parenting classes and family counseling before any supervised visitation is considered. Your behavior pattern suggests you may need support in understanding appropriate parental conduct. Ethan's face went red with rage. This is expletive. You're all ganging up on me because he's got money. Mr. Reed, James said pleasantly. I should mention that making false reports to child services is a criminal offense in Washington, D.C. Harassment and intimidation of a custodial parent is also actionable in civil court. I'd suggest you think very carefully about your next steps. Ethan looked around the room, clearly realizing he was outmatched and outmaneuvered. This isn't over, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Yes, it is, Nathan said quietly. It's been over since you walked out on your responsibilities. The only question now is whether you want to try to build a healthy relationship with your son, or whether you want to keep playing games that hurt everyone, including him. After Ethan left, muttering threats under his breath, Linda finished her paperwork, while James and Nathan spoke quietly near the window. Liam woke up as the adults were leaving, looking around with bright, curious eyes, and immediately smiling when he saw Emily. Well, hello there, handsome, Linda said softly. And Emily saw her professional mask slip for just a moment. You're a lucky little boy. You know that? You've got a mama who loves you very much. Miss Hayes, Emily said as Linda was preparing to leave. What happens now? Now I file my report, stating that there are no welfare concerns regarding your son. The case will be closed unless new evidence emerges. And Miss Larson, Linda smiled. For what it's worth, you're doing a good job. Being a single mother is hard enough without people trying to make it harder. After everyone left, Emily sat on the bed holding Liam, trying to process everything that had just happened. A lawyer? She said to Nathan. When did you call a lawyer? Yesterday. After our conversation, I realized that Ethan wasn't going to just disappear. I wanted to be prepared. And James just happened to be available this morning? Nathan looked slightly embarrassed. James has been my lawyer for 5 years. He's used to my emergencies. Your emergencies probably usually involve contracts and real estate deals, not custody battles over other people's children. No, Nathan agreed. They usually involve much less important things. Emily studied his face. You told that social worker you wanted to adopt Liam. I do, if you'll let me. If he'll have me. Nathan, we've been together for less than 24 hours officially. I know it's fast. I know it's crazy, but Emily, when I saw Ethan trying to take him away from you, when I imagined that beautiful little boy growing up thinking his father didn't want him, Nathan's voice broke slightly. I realized I'd do anything to protect both of you. Legal adoption papers would just make it official. Emily looked down at Liam, who was staring up at Nathan with the kind of trust that babies only show to people they consider safe. He already loves you, she said softly. And I love him. I love both of you more than I've ever loved anything in my life. Even though this is all complicated and messy and probably going to get more complicated, especially because of that, Nathan said, sitting beside her on the bed, easy things don't teach you what you're made of. Hard things do. And Emily, what we're made of is pretty damn strong. As if to agree, Liam reached up and grabbed Nathan's finger with his tiny fist, holding on tight. I think that's a yes, Emily said, laughing through the tears she hadn't realized were falling. To which part? All of it. The adoption, the marriage, the whole crazy, impossible, beautiful mess. When Nathan kissed her, Liam was still holding his finger, and Emily thought, this might be what perfect looks like. Not easy, not simple, but real and fierce and unbreakable. Chapter 9. When Tomorrow Calls Your Name. The woman standing in the motel office doorway was everything Emily had never been. Tall, blonde, flawlessly composed, and unmistakably pregnant. Emily froze mid-motion while feeding Liam his bottle, watching through her window as the woman spoke to Ruth with the kind of effortless authority that suggested she'd never been denied anything. Even from a distance, Emily could see the expensive tailoring of her clothes, the designer handbag, the subtle gleam of jewelry that probably cost more than most people's annual salaries. This had to be Laura. Nathan, Emily called softly, not taking her eyes off the scene unfolding outside. You need to see this. Nathan emerged from the tiny kitchenette where he'd been making coffee, took one look out the window, and went completely pale. Expletive, he breathed. That's your ex-wife. That's Laura. Nathan's voice was tight with tension. And she's pregnant. Emily felt her world tilt sideways. Pregnant? Before Nathan could respond, there was a sharp knock on their door, not the gentle tap Nathan used or the friendly knock of Ruth, but something imperious and demanding. Nathaniel. Laura's voice was crisp, cultured, with the kind of accent that spoke of expensive private schools. I know you're in there. We need to talk. Nathan looked at Emily with something like panic in his eyes. I need to handle this. We need to handle this, Emily corrected, standing up with Liam still in her arms. I'm not hiding. Emily, you don't understand. Laura can be difficult. I can hear you talking in there, Laura called through the door. Really, Nathaniel,